So lighten up. So look at someone sitting by you and tell them you're glad they're here today. Now look back at the same person and tell them, however, this message is for me. So if you want somebody in your life to lighten up, raise your hand. There's somebody in your life that you want to lighten up, raise your hand. Now, if you want to be the one to lighten up, keep your hand up. This is where it's possible. Wanting them to lighten up, impossible. Choir, impossible. Impossible. Have you noticed? Wanting them to change irritates you. Wanting them to be different than they are irritates them also. So it doesn't go all that well in our relationships when we're trying to get them to be something besides what they are. So what's it like in you when someone tries to change you? You might say it out loud. What's it like in you when they're trying to change you? Frustrating, irritating. We don't like it. That's a reason not to do it to them. So we sing and pray every single Sunday, let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. Let's be about enlightenment, and let it begin with me. So get a sense of the consequences on you of trying to lighten somebody else up. What does it cost you? What's the consequences to your own life of trying to lighten somebody else up? Stress, aggravation, ultimately depression, despair, hopelessness, pitifulness, resignation, or for some of us more dominant types, turn up the heat. Take control, take charge. We won't give up. We amp up instead. What's the price to you? What's the cost to you for wanting what is not? Now, who would you be? What would it be like to, let's say, surrender to it? You do not have to love it. You do not have to like it. Just what would it be like to surrender to the way of it? I'm not asking you to, by the way. Don't let me take your hell from you this early. What would it be like to surrender to the way of it for your own sake? I don't have to like it. I don't have to love it. I don't have to agree with it. I don't have to prefer it. Just what would it be to accept what I cannot change? What would it be like to surrender to what I've tried to do, to wake up to it's impossible to do what I cannot do? Get a sense of that in your body And then say it out loud. What would it be like to surrender to the way of it? Refreshing, grace-filled, relief, more free time. You could actually have a life that interests you. Get a sense of it in your body. What would it be like to kind of throw in the towel over there? More open, more spacious, more innovative, more creative, more resourceful, more collaborative, ingenious, clear-minded, focused. Does this sound okay with you? Are you really willing for your life to be easier than it is? You sure? Are you willing for your life to be easier than it is? So the prison of the mind is what we're in. The prison we're in, the only chains we're in, is a prison of the mind. The door's wide open. And here we sit, if we're not careful, wanting them to do what they're not doing. Shoulding on them. They should do that. They shouldn't do that. I know how it ought to be. Like, who needs God when we've got you to run the world? Who needs God when you've got me to dictate how things ought to be? So get a sense, if you just did one little thing, like drop the should, that every time you hear it come through, you know it's a trap. You know it's a dead-end street that leads to hopelessness, impossibilities. Any should opposes reality. Let's take one for example. They should listen to me. You could apply this to your children or your parents, your partners or spouses. They should listen to me. Now, this work is about being in a reality base. And for me, God is reality. Basic unity. God is one power and the one presence, the force of all the universe, the creator of all that is. We're a divine spark of that which it is. We commune with that through reflection, through prayer, through meditation. And it's not enough to understand that theoretically. For until we apply this and live this out into our world, it's just another theory. Something to tout. Oh yes, I know these principles. It's like, well, tell your face, because your face hasn't caught up. All is well, all is well, all is well. It's like, your face is not reflecting that. So this is our journey. This is our journey through this. So you believe you have one little teeny weeny thought like, she or he should listen to me. What's the reality of it? Do they? Altogether? No. So, reality reports no. And if I continue to believe they should listen to me, who's causing my suffering? So hold up your finger. Look at that unique little fingerprint that you've got. Of all the many billions of us, that's the only one like it. And point it right back at yourself and go, it's up to me. It's up to me. It will not change out there until it changes here. Basic unity. Whatever thought you believe creates your reality. So if you believe a thought, they should listen, and they don't, reality says, no, that's not a match. Oh yes, they should listen. What do you create for yourself? Stress, delusion, insanity, depression, despair, frustration, irritation, ultimately then depression, devastation. So, is they should listen to me a reality-based thought or a fantasy-based thought? They should listen to me. Is it reality-based or fantasy-based? So as long as you live in a fantasy, more suffering. Reality is kinder than the fantasy. Reality is more stable, solid ground than the fantasy, the myth, the fairy tale thinking that we innocently adopted when we were 3 years old, or 4 or 5 or 6, somewhere in those formative years. We took on all of this BS, belief systems. And we're still under the influence of that Kool-Aid. We drank the Kool-Aid. We drank it innocently. And little kids, we didn't know the difference. We didn't know the difference, so we adopted that. We adapted to it for our own coping, to be a part of, to belong, to be okay. So who would you be? We're looking at just one little thought here. They should listen. If I believe that, I suffer. If you just dropped that one thought, if it had no effect on you, for example, they should listen to me. The thought will still come to you. You're not the thinker. Thoughts are occurring. Thoughts rise and pass. So the thought would come to you again. They should listen to me. Who would you be if you didn't believe it? If you no longer adopted it as a part of your belief system, if you were more on a reality belief system than a fantasy belief system, who would you be when the thought occurred to you, they should listen? How would you respond? You'd let it go. What would it be like to have the thought, they should listen, and it have no effect on you? What would that be like? Peaceful, calmer. Let's call it sane, functional, clear-minded. Then ultimately more focused, changing what I can. Changing the only thing in the world I can change, which is my mind that's projecting that. So to work at the level of the projection. And to catch the insanity and the powerful allure to work in the projection. The allure to get into their business. The allure to straighten out their life. The temptation to give my wise advice. Just there's no one listening. Have you noticed? So guess who your advice is for? So point back to you again. Oh, all of my advice is for me. Then the day you can live out your advice, then talk to us about it. The day you can apply your wisdom, then give it to us. So it's like, judge ye not. Where'd you get that? Anybody here that doesn't judge? Yeah, I want to plan your ascension. We'll film it. So we hear things like this, and it's like the mind is a judging machine. It judges 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, even in our sleep, even in our dreams. Good, bad, right, wrong, up, down, black, white, tall, short, fat, skinny, too much, too little. The whole operating system is that of judgment. So now when you invite people to church, you can say, hey, come and join me over at Unity of the North Shore. We're a judgmental bunch. You'll be right at home. Oh my God, you're judgmental. It's like, yes. Judging based on the frame I've always looked through, which was that of good or bad, right or wrong. So now imagine taking that frame down and reframing it with God is, or what is. Neither good nor bad, just what is. So my role then, my part, is how am I going to relate to what is? I don't get to pick what happens, darn. You don't get to pick what happens either. Have you noticed? So how are you going to relate to what is differently? That's where all the power is. All the power within you, all the power of the one power and the one presence in you, inviting us to respond instead of react. Inviting us to join and align with the way of it, instead of opposing the way of it, or being a victim to the way of it. And the victim archetype is very strong. It's the oldest archetype in history. Something's happening to me, instead of it happens. So now let's go back to imagine now that you're a radiant light being. Your luminosity dial is turned all the way up to 10. This is when you're feeling good. You're like inspired and like serving and aware of life, aware of grace, aware of what you've been given, aware of the source of that. So you're full and your luminosity dial is at 10. So you are lighted up. Get a sense of it. Do you even remember when you felt good? Just once? Like recall what it was like when you felt full and vital, like something's moving me, something's compelling me, I'm being impulsed by the universe, like I'm in the flow. You had synchronicity, you had awareness of this. Remember that? What that's like? To be lighter, lightened up. Now watch what happens to your luminosity dial when this starts. They should listen to me. I want them to respect me. I need their love. I'm not safe. Can you even sense it in the room? What's happening to your luminosity dial? Just one thought at a time. Shrinking. Heavy. So what would it be to meet those thoughts with understanding? So when the thought comes in, like the one we just did, she should listen to me, he should listen to me. What if you turned it around? What if you understood the mind has everything backwards? Remember the theory about the mirror? That is a mirror unto myself. So then, she should listen to me would become what? If you turned it around. She should not listen to me. Who knew? What's the reality of it? Does she? Does he? So back to your reality base. Which is truer? She should listen or she shouldn't listen if she's not listening? Which is truer? She should not. This is a wake up to reality. This is like come into alignment with reality for your own sake. Then if my advice is you should listen, who should be listening? Me again. So every time I think you should listen, that advice is for me. I should listen to what you're saying. I should understand you. You know the prayer of St. Francis? Let me seek first to understand before imposing a need for understanding. Let me first be kind before I expect kindness. Let me first be peace before I look for peace. Let me first be love. Let me be the first to do this. God in you, God in me. You go first. Me go first. So I should listen to myself, take my own advice. I should listen to them to seek understanding of where they're coming from for my sake, not for their sake, for my own sake. And then they shouldn't listen to me until they do. So this is an example of how we practically, thought by thought by thought by thought, interaction by interaction, can lighten ourselves up. Doesn't cost anything. Free, practical, applicable, principle-based, accessible. And that's what the workshop is about this afternoon, to get a little practice at this. It's a technology. Eckhart Tolle describes this work as a razor-sharp sword that cuts right through the illusion. So it's like his work is what to do. This work is how to do it, for example. So then how to take our basic unity principles and embody them so that they're not just theory to us, but practical, applied, and lived out. So now look at somebody by you again and tell them, I'm going to lighten up. I'm going to lighten up. I'm going to lighten up. Now, I want you to get an idea about what that would actually mean. What's one thing you can do to lighten up? Just one. What's one thing you can do to lighten up? So call it to mind, then tell them. Look back at them and tell them, here's one thing I know I can do to lighten up. Tell your partner, here's one thing I know I can do to lighten up. Let me hear from some of you. What is it? Say it again. One thing at a time, one interaction at a time, one thought at a time. You'd be more present, more empowered. What else are you going to do? Listen first. Stop trying to fix other people. Somebody give her a high five. Stop trying to fix other people. What's the outcome when you try to fix other people? Hopeless. Choir, hopeless. So how much of it will we keep doing? So find a way you can lighten up for your own sake.